Hi Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and YouTube and the digital universe. I'm Tabby Wells and I'm the creator of Small Gods, which is a dystopian television show that I've been working on for the past few months. What started off with just writing a pilot episode script has evolved into something much bigger than I ever thought it could be. We've had multiple rehearsed readings over Zoom, we've had original concept art and music created, and we're now at the stage where the project is going to be pitched to different production companies and studios. So what is Small Gods, you might ask? Well, Small Gods is set in the post-apocalyptic city of Nightwing, 35 years after a chemical war. In this city, there are multiple different guilds that are warring for absolute power, from a guild of ancient assassins to a very corrupt law enforcement, all under the rule of tyrannical government. But little do they know that there is a very ominous and perhaps extraterrestrial force lurking underneath that threatens life as they know it. As the project is in the pitching stage, we wanted to thank all of our followers and supporters by introducing a new piece of content that personally I think you guys will find really exciting. Recently, I've been having interviews with the cast of the final rehearsed read, asking them questions about the world so that you can get a better insight into what Small Gods is really about and why we all love it so much. There are multiple interviews for you to sit through, so you can sit whilst having a cup of tea on a rainy day or maybe on your way to work or just as something in the background. But I'm hoping that they keep you hooked and give you a reason to keep supporting this project, which we're so unbelievably grateful for. So sit down, get comfortable, and most of all, enjoy.
Got an email saying, do you want to do it? And I was like, what is it? It's about assassins. I'm in. I have a perpetual love of games, fantasy, and Lovecraftian horror. If you were to combine those three things, you probably get Small Gods. I realized I don't think I've ever played the Assassin's Creed games themselves, but like Dishonored, Skyrim, all of these, you know the world of dark fantasy that I think is so, it's not only in vogue at the moment, it's wonderful. The whole Elder Scrolls series, the combination of faux Norse mythology, creating a world and then putting that in a dystopia. Brilliant. Assassin's Guilds are always fun. I'm a Discworld fan. Don't kill, what is it? Don't kill unless it's for money because it lowers the value of it. Murder just, ruins the market. So I think once the premise is it's a group of assassins, you accept that death is going to be part of it and that perhaps it's not the worst thing that happens in this world, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because you're making people empathize with people who inherently kill people for money. That sounds like an exciting world to me. I like the aesthetic as well. That's why I'm drawing it. Kind of a slight Grecian steampunk dystopian world. So yeah, and I think you're good. I think the fact that you've shown up with a script and been so professional from day one, the fact you sent me an NDA, I'm not going to lie, when you sent me an NDA, I was like, what is this? And then you explained it and I went, okay, good that you've set that up from the off. Like, you've approached this as a professional. You've not done this as a, can you do a favor for a mate? You've gone, I'm a professional director hiring actors. And I think that's worth a punt on any project, even if the project itself sounded a bit odd, but actually all sounded quite good. The fun thing is it doesn't. It stands out for the right reasons and it blends in for the right reasons. You don't want a show like this to be so out there that you spend the first 3 episodes creating a language. We understand assassin climbing a wall, shooting someone. We know it. It sits comfortably in its genre that you've already got the language that the audience can be drawn into. You don't have to sell them all of this world because they will have an inherent knowing of this world. And as we said earlier, not on call, cities are interesting places. And there are a lot of human fears that can exist in cities and in post-apocalyptic places and in dystopias. And you are speaking to a lot of very primal fears. So that's almost where it sits in and then where it stands out is what those fears are, because they're not what you think it is. Because you can just bring in an alien tentacle monster, and you know what? Brilliant. I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be the corrupt politician. No, monster. Love it. Brilliant. I think I said the other day, why do I like horror? Because it's easier to kill and not feel bad about it. It takes away. The big baddie is bad. We are going to defeat the big baddie. You don't have to worry about the moral compass of somebody who is killing the bad thing, but you have to worry about it for everything else. You have to worry about the drugs, the religion, the interpersonal relationships. You have to worry, I hope that you're developing this into a political drama, because that's what it feels like. You want to look at politics in the same way you mentioned Terry Pratchett. Discworld does it so well, which is it gives you monsters in order to make you ask, okay, but where are the real monsters? Because this is the guy with the axe at me, but actually, what are the politicians doing that mean that he's attacking me? So who's really pulling the strings? So I think that it's got a lot of scope for political drama. It's got a lot of scope for good old-fashioned horror. And it stands out because you've done interesting things with religion. Religion is a messy minefield to deal with on screen. Good Omens has done it beautifully in my eyes. I loved that book when it came out. Well, I say when it came out, when I first read it when I was about a teenager, which is longer ago than people believe. But when I first read Good Omens, I was like, yes, this is what you want to do with religion, which is to be both actually respectful of people's belief systems, but utterly, play the hell out of how they live with them. Yeah, because music can absolutely be a religion. And it can be a drug, and it can be something that taps into people's brains. And because you've done that, suddenly you're not going to be angering a major world sect when you pick it apart. Good. Well, bloody time. Romance is great. Sex is fantastic and part of the human condition. It is not the entirety of the human condition. And I stand by. I remember someone saying pantomime became bad because it stopped being principal boy and it started being about romance, because they started casting a man in the lead role, which meant that suddenly these adventure stories, where maybe at the end you'd get a kiss on the cheek from whatever, became about the wedding. And you're like, no, I don't care if Jack climbs a beanstalk for his mum, and then all of this happens. I don't care if Jack's like, that's not where that is. And I think that at our hearts, we know that romance is a driver, but there are so many other ways to love. I think it would be wrong to say this isn't a story about love. This is absolutely a story about love. It's just that it's a different kind. Romantic love is important, and I'm sure may figure at some point, but it's not for everyone. Sex certainly isn't for everyone, and most of the time people are very busy. The amount of sex...
These characters in particular are busy all the time.
Yeah. I'm like, send some love for the ace community, but also send some love up for the fact that people are really busy. And actually, the height of human civilization shouldn't be an orgasm. Like, it's a great and wonderful thing that I hope that at some point you might play with in the element of it, but it's not about that. People do incredible things for love, but love is multifaceted. And so I think it's exciting to see a story that embraces a different kind of love that isn't for kids as well. QUOL was the character I wanted to be growing up, and I read myself in that character in every fantasy book I read. I think I'm reading Brian Sanderson novels at the moment, The Mistborn, and I'm reading the character in that, the lead in that, and I'm like, yeah, there is a similarity. Again, it's a character concept and trope that we all kind of know, but the fact that they're non-binary is amazing. The fact that they're quite kind is amazing. And I like that QUOL is not obvious. They're very intelligent, but they're not unpleasant. We're so used to seeing Sherlock Holmes pick people apart with intelligence. And it's wonderful, it's great, and Cumberbatch does a wonderful job. But it's so nice to see a character who actually would rather keep it to themselves and do their job well, whose moral compass is they are amoral, not immoral. They follow, I think, probably their own, if we're talking sort of D&D alignment, they are very much true neutral or even lawful neutral. They follow their own rules. And I think they would hesitate to cross their own rules. It's just that those aren't the same rules as everybody else. And QUOL is, like I say, remarkably soft for the leader of an assassin. And very, like I say, it's wonderful to play a competent character. There's something so wonderful about a character who has nothing to prove because they're excellent at what they do. It's then fun to put them in situations where they don't know what they're doing, because then obviously a lot of drama happens. This is a character who is used to being in control, however, is flexible enough that I think that they could take on a challenge. It's not arrogance, it's just the case of they've fought very hard to be where they are, and they've earned that. It'll be interesting to see where and how they grow, because there's room for growth. And I like I said, I think they're very likable. The fun thing about them is they're not duplicitous. Yeah. They are somebody who is actually very much what you see is what you get. And while they can hold things back, there is an honesty that I think is almost uncomfortable for some people. Like, they will tell you when you've done something wrong, just as they'll tell you when you've done something right. And for them, it's all honesty. I've recently finished recording an audiobook for How to Understand Your Gender. And as pointed out in there, when you start considering gender as being more than just what's in, how you relate to what's in your pants, and you start going, well, it's to do with how I present and how I express my gender and how I experience my gender and how you experience it's to do with all these things. Most people are not as binary. Very, very few people are men or women. Like, especially as, we thankfully shake off some of the shackles of the Victorian era and colonialism. People were non-binary. Like, the poor, working class, like poverty serfs, were just considered poor. That was their gender. They didn't differentiate between men and women. If you were very wealthy, then I'm sure there were ladies and gentlemen, and then there were everybody else. And I think our modern concept of gender being this rigid structure that is almost like an astrology chart. You were born as a man, which means you like these things and you wear these clothes and you interact like this. And society will force you to repress your emotions to the point at which, suicide becomes a massive, massive issue for your gender, like in your 30s. And so I feel like having non-binary characters, to be honest, it's just representative of the world that we're living in. And the idea that in the future, we're going to view gender the same as we view it now, it's frankly laughable. We don't view gender the same way as we did 30 years ago. And so I think in terms of writing and things like that, it's very important because I think it adds to the story. I also think it's vital for non-binary and trans representation. It's also trans mask from the people you cast. We get more trans femme representation in both good and bad ways. So trans women are talked about a lot, especially in the media, and vilified, horrifically. I think it's very important that you've got non-binary actors playing non-binary characters. Watch Exposure for further details, the documentary on Netflix about the importance of seeing trans and non-binary bodies on stage and screen in these roles. I love it because I needed QUOL. I needed QUOL the same way I needed a character in a different audiobook I was reading, who was a young prince, really, is a trans man who grows into being a prince and later a king. I needed that when I was 7. I needed QUOL when I was 14, when I was trying to find things to watch and go, I'm that hero. Because it's great me going, oh, I'm Spider-Man, because I'm sort of agile and quirky, but I'm not, am I? And I'm sort of, Sabriel, but I'm not, am I? And having somebody, I think I've said before, we need to see ourselves so that we can grow to be ourselves. And we need to show, it's great that you have 2 non-binary characters because there are so many ways to be non-binary. representation is important so that we don't limit the potential of people who are watching. And so that, you know, there is a kid who goes, oh yeah, I'm QUOL. And who, when they need to talk to their parents to say they're non-binary, they say, oh yeah, I'm non-binary. You know, like QUOL is. Or like Cal is. And when someone says, you know, Cal may not be the best Calix in terms of
I hope no one thinks they're like Calix, otherwise they go to prison.
Yeah, I hope they don't. But they are in religion, and they are a non-binary person in a position of power in a religious order. They exist. You can have religious beliefs and be non-binary. You can be an incredible sports person and be trans. You can be this. You can be a woman in a position of power and still be soft and wonderful and kind. Like
Roused.
Yeah, like Roused. Fantastic. You can have these people. And I could, again, talk your ear off about the importance of diversity and representation on stage and screen, but it's vital so that you can give people hope. That's what diversity gives people. It's hope. It stops making you feel alone. You feel less lonely, even if you're connecting with a fictional character. If they are your emotional support character, because you can sit there and go, I'm going to get my hair like them, I'm going to dress like them, I'm going to be like them because they're like me. And then you realize that you're not them, and that's cool. And suddenly you go, oh, but I'm going to keep that little bit of QUOL, that little kindness. And then I'm going to see this other non-binary person and go, that's what I'm going to keep. And then eventually you realize that what you're keeping is yourself. And all these characters are doing they're helping you find the elements of yourself that you didn't have words for, because we are all chameleons. We will all take on these character voices or traits or whatever else, and if we can contribute to helping people find themselves, that's one of the greatest things that we can do as creatives. Why do people spend time on anything? Because it's great fun. Because when you watch dark fantasy, you're watching it both to see a reflection of the world and escapism. Some people will watch it, and as they should, because it will be completely so distant from their own life that they can watch it and be like, this is great. It's action-packed. I'm following these characters. I'm falling in love with these characters. I'm frightened of these characters. And they will have that escapism, and that will be enough and more than enough and a beautiful thing. And some people will watch it because what they'll see is our world through a lens. And we're living in a time of corrupt politicians, of danger, of the world being a dangerous place, maybe not from monsters, but from our own impacts of global warming and climate change. And there are dangers out there. And of course, the human condition, the thing that we're always up against. And I think people who watch Small Gods will see that what you've very cleverly done is you're making commentary on all that in a way that is able to get past censorship, and it's not too on the nose. When people feel like they themselves are being called out, they're going to get defensive. If religion was the obvious example, if you wanted to make a commentary about corruption in the Catholic Church, for example, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be very uncomfortable with that, because it's very dear to their heart, it's very important to them, and regardless of how sensitively you did it, there are going to be people against it. If you make a commentary about corruption in Calix's church, suddenly it's not their church anymore, but maybe they'll be able to see the issues that you're bringing up, and they'll be able to reflect on it in their own lives in a way that's safe. Fantasy lets us explore what's going on in a fantasy setting. We get to detach, we get to take away our own biases and go, it shows us a safer reflection. Does that make sense? So I think in seeing Small Gods, I hope it'll give you some hope into how we can change our world. I don't know, maybe it won't. I've only read episode 1. Also, like, Assassins are fun. Watch Assassins. I think there's elements of buddy comedy, which we need. And it's going to be aesthetically beautiful. My God. If you get the kind of people who you could get for this, and if you play with the sort of effects you will, it's going to be visually very good. It'll be interesting to see who you pick as your DOP. or if that's an opportunity for you, because there's some interesting cinematography that could be applied to this, and you could take it in some very interesting places. Because it is so out there, you don't have to stay to conventional shots.
Which is exciting and terrifying in equal measure.
Having no boundaries is terrifying, but having a big playground is fun.